So, welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience Podcast. Today, I have an amazing entrepreneur. Elizabeth is a published author. She's written Slay in Your Lane, The Black Girl Bible in 2018, along with writer Yomi Adegogi. She's published several other titles since, and at the moment, she has launched a platform called Storia. And we're going to talk about that because, how you came about that and how you decided to, embark on this journey. Do you want to talk me through how you got into writing?
So I kind of like fell into being an author. I never really saw myself as somebody that wanted to write. So it just happened. So I was working in the corporate world after university, and I was kind of struggling to navigate myself around some of the I guess some of the things that I was experiencing. And I asked my best friend, who was working in journalism at the time, to write me a book that kind of spoke to my experiences as a young Black woman navigating the world of work. And then she said that we should both do it because it's not just going to be, a book, it's going to be a movement. And I think at that time I was like, oh, actually a movement. Obviously I worked in marketing, and that, people say they want brands, say they want, movements, but it's one thing to say it, another thing for it to become a reality. So I did, politics at university. So I essay-based subjects was something that I was, I guess, used to. So that was how it happened. And then she asked me, for us to work together, and then we did.
And what's inspired you to really write this particular book? So, if we talk about Slay in Your Lane, what was the inspiration behind it, and what impact do you think that this conversation has had around Black women's experiences?
So what led me to want to write it? I guess I wanted a book that resonated with me. At the time, there was loads of books such as, Lean In, which was a kind of real cultural landmark around talking about women in the workplace. And I was like, well, why aren't we talking about Black women in the workplace? And so that was where the inspiration really came from. And The impact the book has had, we wrote the book in 2017. It's now 2023. So it came out in 2018 actually. So it's had an amazing impact, and more than we actually ever would have thought at that point. I think I've spoken at so many workplaces internally, and I've spoken at like different, being able to kind of spread the message of what we was talking about in terms of workplaces, how Black women have to kind of navigate all these different themes of their lives differently to their white counterparts. So I think it brought a lot of awareness to some of the issues and some of the challenges, but I think it also brought a lot of optimism, and that was really important for us, just because it's easy to point out the bad, but we also wanted to kind of balance it with the good. And we did that really well with speaking to amazing um, Black women who were essentially slaying in their lanes in different fields. So, for example, um, Vanessa Kingori, who is the publisher of British Vogue, to various other like amazing Black women. So profiling them and hearing their experiences really injected a real sense of optimism to the book.
And I think it also serves to say that allies who are out there can also help us because they're able to engage and understand our stories as you've told them, and opens up the conversation in a really collaborative but in a progressive way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important for it to feel like we're all having this conversation, not just, like Black women who already know what the challenges are. And I think that was what really resonated with people who aren't Black women. It felt quite inclusive, even though we were very specifically speaking to Black women. So yeah, I think it's as the story goes, all the stories an experience, the more universal it is. We've all crave belonging. That's a human feeling. So I think that in itself helps spread the message.
Indeed. And the main message, like you said, is that we're all human. It doesn't matter what color, creed, culture. We all have, shared needs. If we look at the Maslow law of needs, we all have shared things that we are aspiring to, and it's been a good way through your books and your literature to embark on that. You've also written the offline diaries and the reset, and now you've embarked onto Storia, which I'm really excited to talk about, and you've described it as a headspace for journaling. What motivated you to create a journaling app, and how does it differ from other journaling tools in the market?
I've been journaling for as long as I can remember, and it's always been the compass to my chaos, and I really turn to it as a way to kind of navigate who I am and what I think of the world around me, and it's a way to connect to myself. I always struggled with like the journaling tools that were on the market. None of it ever resonated with me. So I would always use the Notes app as a way to I guess, express myself, what I'm thinking, or pulling together ideas. And I found the other journaling apps quite restrictive. Story is a journaling app that helps you become your best self, and we do that by organizing your thoughts. If you can't think well, you can. It's really hard to kind of know what you want in life, and who you are, and the way we built the app is different chapters, different journals reflect different journeys in our life. So it really is inspired by the ability to kind of create different journals that can be inspiration for yourself, but for other people as well, and document, a snapshot, like document our journey. I felt like other journaling apps, you were kind of documenting, you were just telling them how you felt. And I think with Storia, it's more so about your journey, who you are, and those around you. And what makes it really different and really radical is we are making it much more community driven. So as the African proverb says, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that really is the kind of the genesis of why we've built Storia. We genuinely do believe that one of the greatest challenges of our time is the feeling of not belonging and not feeling like you're understood. And Storia is a place where we want to build something that people feel like they truly belong.
Yeah, you've touched on important points. So belonging, that community, connections, and also acknowledging the users of the app, that it is their unique voice through journaling as well. So, I mean, amazing that you've actually done that and looked at a problem that was affecting you and decided to create a solution for it. I think that's the main thread I see with lots of founders. They they look at something that's bothering them and said, right, how can I find a solution so that it helps me? And ultimately, how do you extend that?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that everyone has loads of different ideas, but executing it is, not always easy. I think it's probably very hard and very challenging. And I think that what I've been privileged enough to do over the years is execute on the ideas I've had, even if it's a book in book form, in working with brands in terms of campaigns, and now obviously with Storia. So I think for me, I like to use and create things that I would want to use. And I'm inspired by like my everyday like life sort of thing. So yeah, like same way you write the book that you want to read, I want to build the journaling app that I wanted to use. And I feel incredibly privileged every single day that I get to wake up and do that. So and yeah, so that's essentially, if I didn't feel like, I remember when the Silicon Valley Bank thing happened a few months ago, and the money just disappeared from the account, and it was just all a bit of a it was very like very overwhelming. um I um I remember thinking, oh wow, I cannot believe Story is not going to exist. it should exist. It shouldn't exist just because it's me. It should exist because I genuinely do believe it makes the world a better place. So I think so if there was any reason why I felt even more passionate about building this, is because I believe it should exist and exist in this way. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a question there, because I know that you raised funding for Storia, but what are you saying? You said you'd raised the money, it was in your account, and then it was gone. What happened there?
So there was a bit of a banking issue. I can't even explain it in a more succinct manner, but it was so Silicon Valley Bank basically were bailed out by the government, and HSBC bought them, and it happened over a couple of days where there was an issue. But long story short, it was a bit of a touch and go experience because all my money was like tied up in one bank. So Silicon Valley Bank is a lot of entrepreneurs use it. So imagine going to your bank and not seeing the money that you're meant to have. So it was, it was very touch and go. Rishi Sunak got involved, and the government, and it was happening in America as well. So it was a bit of a banking crisis that happened, and I guess the average person wouldn't, I guess, have experienced that, just because it was the majority of people who bank at Silicon Valley Bank are startups and business owners. So that was what happened, and I remember it was like the longest weekend of my life probably, and I was just like, wow, like, is this? I remember thinking, oh wow, I was a CEO for 5 minutes, sort of thing, and yeah, but it was all sorted afterwards.
Oh, that's isn't it the challenges, isn't it? It's either you're looking for funding, or you found funding, or you're worried that the funding is being, spent not in the right way. What have you learned from, so you ran a pilot obviously for Storia last summer. What have you learned from the pilot, and what can users expect from the next upcoming version of the app?
Yeah, so one of the things that is, I guess, validates the need for Storia in its current form, is it's the fact that the majority of the people that use our app have never journaled before. I would say, I think it's like 83.3% of the people who sign up to Storia had never journaled before, have never used a journaling app. So that in itself is quite interesting, and it speaks to the fact, it validates, our assumptions around there is a market here of people who aren't being served, who use the Notes app, but the Notes app stops being fruitful after a point. So instead, there's just like a mammoth of just different notes, not structured, and therefore it becomes like a abyss of just like your to-do list, your shopping list, passwords. It just becomes a whole mess. So Storia, for us, in the core experience of Storia, is about capturing your thoughts, so writing different notes and organizing them in different journals. And I thought that was really cute and really nice, just because in reality, a lot of us do amazing things at work, and in our lives, and we're always kind of experiencing imposter syndrome in various forms. And one of the ways to combat imposter syndrome is to always remind yourself of the achievements that you've done, and not just like achievements, but who you are. When someone says something nice about your character and your values, like, it's just always important to kind of capture that. And I think, in our fast-paced world, it's somewhat, we don't really capture those moments. So when he said to me the other day that he uses Storia, he's got like five journals on Storia, but one of them is just literally called imposter syndrome, and he adds something nice that someone says about his work and who he is in that journal. And when he experiences, like, a bit of imposter syndrome, doing a big talk somewhere or whatever it is, he's able to essentially go into that journal to make him feel really empowered. And that in itself is, exactly how I wanted people to use Storia, for sure.
That's amazing. So it's already impacting how people organize their thoughts, and they're not, seeing it through chaos. And also they're on a self-discovery, isn't it? Every time they're able to compartmentalize different thoughts in that journal. So already must be heartwarming to see that something that you thought about come to fruition and is helping people in different ways.
Yeah, I definitely think it's very humbling, and I think as an author, I experienced that, for sure. And it not to be whatever. But you start to take it for granted a little bit, and I feel like Story has really breathing a new lease of life for me, in terms of like really, when someone signs up to our newsletter, on our website, and because I'm doing everything manually, so when I get the notification and I put them into our private beta, and I send them an email, like it's honestly so wonderful, and I've never been so appreciative of people's time, and when people give me feedback, like on an email, it just means a lot, because when you're an early stage founder, you're just doing you're the one that's kind of like across everything. So it's a very humbling experience, and I only hope that Storia delivers value in people's lives. Like I really, 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 like, if I didn't believe it delivered value, I wouldn't do it. I genuinely just wouldn't, because it's not easy. It's very challenging building a startup. So I think the thing that definitely keeps me going are the people who, that show their appreciation for using the app. Or when I go on our data analytics in the morning, first thing I see that someone's done a daily Storia, then I'm like, oh, I get really happy, because I genuinely do believe that every entry, no matter how small, really like ladders up to unearthing your voice and getting and connecting with who you are, not on a surface level. So I think at the moment I'm just loving the fact that people have different uses for Storia, and it's always interesting. So I ask, so sometimes I'm like, oh, let me see your Storia, because it's so fascinating to see how other people use it, which is very nice. And then also the daily Storia, which is our prompt today, that we really wanted to make it a global habit. So one day there's a new prompt every single day, and it starts with an idiom, and then you click on it, and then it opens up a prompt, and then you can write your prompt, and what we're working on now is to make that prompt available to others if you want to, so you can see other people's prompts if they have shared that on our feed. So I think for me, it's just getting to a point where people feel like they belong, and there's this real sense of community. I think that's really at the heart of the problem we're solving, and how we really want to bring people together.
That's brilliant, especially in today's fast-paced world where we know people are struggling to pause and reflect on their experiences. Loneliness is at an all-time high. And we know that there have been some, significant impact. I'm sure research studies will show post-COVID of, just people feeling alone or not heard, not seen. So the fact that it's addressing the need and promoting, self-reflection and the idioms every day, the words, the phrases or words of expression are really helpful to that. Let's talk about, so obviously you're a businesswoman.
Barely.
Well, yeah. So, let's big up that as well. So the pre-seed round, I'm assuming, included, angel investors from various backgrounds. What role do these investors play in the development, and how do you see it? You must have visions for your brand, for the app. Where do you see this going in the future?
So Story is really about creating a space where people feel that they truly belong. So for us, it's really about how do we build features that bring people together. So that's honestly the vision. It really comes down to how do we help people feel like they're part of something, and turn journaling into a global practice, that is done, wherever you are in the world. And it doesn't matter if you're in South London, or you're in Nigeria, or you're in America. The whole world is answering one question: how they feel about one particular thing. And it's a daily practice. And I think for me, it's just like, it's really hard to kind of build relationships and nurture relationships over time. And we all know that, well, not we all know, but the studies are showing that meaningful relationships is really critical to our like improved mental health, and social connection is essential to our well-being. So I think a lot of the first wave of digital networks kind of brought us apart a little bit. There were moments where it brought us together, but it also has made us very divisive as a people. And I think with Storia, we really want to bring people together.
Oh, that's amazing. And like you said, we know that tech was part of the fifth industrial revolution, and some people are saying AI might be the sixth industrial revolution. But one thing, no matter how countries have developed, technology, digital, etc., we all want to belong to a tribe in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. Culturally, we're all about tribes, no matter which area, whether it's Asia, the North American, South America. It's all about tribes and culture. No one wants to be isolated. So creating that digitally through journaling, I think, is just a great way to go.
No, thank you.
What advice would you give then to aspiring, authors or entrepreneurs who want to make a meaningful impact in their respective fields, passions, talents?
It's a very good question. I think I've got so many different bits of advice that has helped me in my life. So I think that if you're looking to make an impact in your individual career, and whatever that looks like, writing a book, building a startup, or whatever it is, I really believe that cultivating the skill of self-awareness is really key. And why I say that is, it's easy to just be buried in the kind of like hustle and bustle and busyness and swarm of other people's opinions and perspectives. And sometimes it's very difficult and challenging to actually work out what you think. Like, because like I said, if you don't think well, it's really hard to come up with, new ways of pushing new ideas forward and whatever it is. So I always say that the greatest connection that you can have is with yourself. And I wouldn't be here, have done anything in my career, if I didn't cultivate that self-awareness. And that's why I journal, because it enables me to link ideas to different ideas, if that makes sense. So Slaying Your Lane was born off, me looking into the world and asking it questions. So there's a level of curiosity of like self-awareness that I was experiencing, and I was like, what happened there? Why can't we do this? And it was just asking the world questions, and I was documenting that. So when I came to a point where I was like, oh, actually, why isn't there a book that's like this? And then you go on the internet, and there isn't a book that is like that. That says that says, okay, cool, that's an opportunity. So I think if you're looking to make an impact, you really have to be curious, cultivate self-awareness, and yeah, and yeah, I would say that that's really important. And then also, like, fear is a really like big one, because I think a lot of people feel like they have ideas or they want to do this, but they are kind of like fearful, and that's really normal. It kind of what protects us. It's a kind of like it's a very human emotion, an instinct. And I still experience that to this day. But I definitely think that it's a muscle. When you kind of like confidence or whatever it is that's kind of stopping you from doing that said thing, it's seeing it as like a muscle. The more you do it, the more it becomes like a habit. So don't let fear stop you. And if you can think about all this, what's the tiniest thing you can do today to push for that dream or for whatever you want to do, then focus on that. Because I think the big thing can be very overwhelming. So it's really about being curious, cultivating self-awareness, and don't letting your fear stop you. And another thing I would say as well is advice that I think is really important, regardless of whatever industry you're in, is understanding that people are, the most important thing. I think understanding how to work with people that are different to you, working like really cultivating that people skill, especially in a world of AI, and relationships matter way more. So who you are, who you say you are, and making sure that you're leaving people better than you found them, it becomes much more of a of an edge, because that's because being able to connect with somebody, and that becomes your superpower. So I would say people as well. So yeah, so just to round up, cultivating self-awareness, curiosity, don't letting fear stop you, and understanding that, being around people, and understanding what makes them tick, and being a people person really gets you far.
That's amazing. And it all comes from a high level of self-awareness, because if you're self-aware, you're in tune with yourself, but it's from a physical, mental well-being, and that spews into your relationships and your decision making, who you interact with, who you want to surround yourself, who you want to solve problems with. Ultimately, all we're doing is problem solvers, whether it's retail, marketing, apps, writing books. You're trying to solve a problem, isn't it, at the end of the day? So
Yeah.
I think really invaluable. And that fear aspect is because there are going to be setbacks, there will be some risks. You've talked about, the small blip on the weekend with not having funds in your bank. And that's a minor setback, but you navigated. First there was panic, but then you were like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Am I going to be a CEO for a minute or a weekend? There are challenges in life, and that's it. I think that
That's
is,
something we can always count on.
yeah, yeah. Storia is a significant project. I mean, its development must have taken time and effort. And how do you prevent burnout and just balance between, your journaling, being self-aware, taking care of you, and the professional side of, being an entrepreneur?
I think just understanding that I can't do all of it at once. I was reading a blog post done by the founder of Canva, and she was talking about that, and it just really resonated. I think in our careers we want to do everything or whatever it is, and you realize that you can't do everything at once, so you have to be able to prioritize what is my greatest focus right now. Understand that different chapters in our lives have different seasons. So yeah, I think it's building a startup is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and it will always be the hardest thing. I just cannot think of anything harder than this. And some days I wake up and it's like, oh my god, I cannot believe I did this to myself willingly. But ultimately it's growth. So yeah, I think, to be honest, you just have to know what you're at. There's this line that I really love, which is like, know the game you're playing,
Mm.
and because you want to make sure that that's the prize you want to win. And I think that when it comes to our careers, it's really important to know what game we're playing, and why. So yeah, so I think it makes it much, if you don't know your why, when things are hard, you're more likely to give up. So even when I'm stressed out or whatever, I think having a why that resonates beyond like the immediate like discomfort and challenge is really important. So yeah, it's a balance, and it's been a very long week, for sure. It's been a very long year, for sure. But I think that, but before we spoke, I went out to the garden with my neighbor, and I was just with them for like 20 minutes this afternoon. And it's just, I need that, because if you're always just at your desk, you just kind of lose yourself. You just really need to kind of understand how you operate best. So yeah, it's a challenge, and I don't think even the best of, like, I don't think anybody has it all figured out. And I'm always in awe of like my parents and the older generation that were not only working, they were raising kids, they were doing it in a country that was, at times hostile. And they didn't have jobs that meant they can work from home. Like, oh my gosh, they didn't. Like, they had to wake up really early. So in the grand reality, there's a lot of gratitude that even when things are difficult, even when you feel emotionally spent, even when you feel really tired or whatever it is, if you having a sense of gratitude, just puts things in perspective. And I think, again, hate to plug journaling, but having things you're grateful for and you're able to kind of like note them down, it's scientifically proven to help you and make you make you happier and more content. I think it's easy to open Instagram or whatever app and feel like you're not enough, you're not doing enough, and then there's this sort of this vicious cycle where our brain, which is already wired to negativity bias, kind of like sends those feelings to you that you should be doing more and all of that sort of stuff. So it's just important, whatever, to kind of ground yourself, but ultimately inject gratitude in your life, even though it's hard, because when you think about, like I said, where the previous generation, what they had to deal with, it's very much like, wow, okay, I actually get to work from home. What a blessing, sort of thing.
I mean, amen to that. It's that thing of commitment. If you commit to yourself, it feels like the things that are coming out of the conversation. So commitment to yourself in terms of self-care, self-awareness, commitment to health and well-being, whether it's your mental, physical well-being, and also commitment to practicing gratitude, every day, just picking out one thing that you're grateful for, just plays your perspective and your way of viewing things is just completely different.
Yeah, for sure.
Storia is definitely growing, and obviously you're going to expand, you're going to have larger teams. What kind of principles or culture or values do you want to embed in your business as it expands and grows?
Oh, I love that question. Because I remember thinking a few months ago, like, oh wow, culture starts with me. And I didn't realize that. I think that I was probably thinking, oh, when I get if I have like a big team, that's when culture, that matters. But I remember realizing, no, culture, and one of my advisors helped me kind of like help crystallize that culture starts with me. So how I show up to that meeting sets a particular culture. So for example, I don't really I'm not really a camera person. Like when it comes to video cameras, I think it just doesn't really help my productivity. But reality is, if I'm engaged with my team, I'm fine if they're not on camera, because I'm not. And that's a culture that I've set. So that, if I wanted that, then I would have to be different. Do you know what I mean? So there's little
Yes.
things that
Yeah.
I am also aware of, that culture starts with me. Like every morning, my developer, he messages me every morning. He tells me exactly what we're doing and where we are. And I've also been in that thing where, even though he doesn't understand my part of the business, I'm also giving him updates on, okay, what we're doing on this side and stuff like that. And just so I'm bringing everybody along the journey with me. So yeah, culture starts with me. Being on time. If I'm late, then I'm setting a culture that it's time is not is okay and stuff. And I think it's fine if there's something that's gone wrong or whatever, or but it's even little things that I'm also getting better at. So because if I don't have self-awareness about the little things in the culture I'm setting, then when things start to go wrong, then it's like, oh, okay, then, well, you set that culture. So I think it's accountability that I didn't realize. And I think one of the things that I love about the culture that we have at Storia is I really value people's questions and curiosity. So when people aren't asking questions, that fills me with way more anxiety than anything. I think that in order to make sure everyone's on the same page and everything, it's really important that we have a culture that is open, that people feel like they can be curious and ask questions, and because all it does, and challenge as well. I think it's like, I love my designer, she just challenges me. And I remember she's been the longest person I've been working with in the team since pre-funding and everything. And one of the reasons why I loved her when we did the interview was just because she didn't just I think maybe because she's Italian, so she's not. I think British people are a bit more. I think we're a bit more, agreeable. But with her, she was just she'll kind of push back, and I do really appreciate that, because there's this sort of you have what's the word, the best interest of the user. Like, you're not trying to please me, you're trying to please the user and think about them. And that's having a people oriented culture and people oriented product is it balances out what you see in the product, if that makes sense. So if I don't have a culture that means that people can be curious and ask questions and challenge, then we're not going to be able to build a product that people ultimately love. So I'm still on my journey, myself. I've only been a CEO for a bit more than 5 minutes now. So 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 I will.
Learn more lessons than most CEOs in 20, 30 years, So
Mm. Yeah. So
the fact that you said culture starts with you, some businesses weren't even talking about culture until most recently. And I feel
mm,
the next generation have really prompted that. And just the way that the world is more connected digitally, people are more self-aware, in tune about why are we, still seeing injustices, or why are things happening, that why can't women have the same rights, and what do we need to fight for more? There's so much
mm,
going on. And I think, like you said, if the culture starts with you, how can you develop an app that's meaningful if you
mm.
don't engage your own team? If they're
Yeah.
not curious, if they can't express themselves, if they can't challenge, then it's a false negative there then. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. And honestly, with all the business books that are out there, the podcasts and stuff like that, like you learn by doing. I wrote a newsletter a few weeks, maybe last week actually, and it was Nature's original curriculum is learning by doing. And it really, really is. So even just learning that, I've had to make mistakes in order to learn that as well. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So circling back, 3 Trailblazer tips. I know you've given lots of tips, but if you were to summarize, to share with the audience, what would they be?
Oh, feel the fear and do it anyway. Not to be, not to be deep, but we don't come out this alive. So we have one life, so make it count. So, and that's something I say to myself all the time as well, because I definitely hold myself back in certain aspects. So feel the fear and do it anyway. Second, just stay curious. Like it's the it's the best thing you can do to your for your career. Asking questions lead to really insightful answers, which lead to insightful whatever you want to build, whatever you want to write, whatever you want to, where you want to take your career. And then I think the third one is stay curious, feel the fear. Anyway, I think the third one has to be about people. Leave people better than you find them. So I think that is a real value that I try to uphold as much as possible. It doesn't really matter if it's a conversation I'm having and it doesn't matter who it is as well. I think that we have this sort of culture that feels as if like, oh, you only try to impress people or whatever it is if you want something from them. And I think that's always a negative way to kind of see building relationships with people. So I always just say, it doesn't matter if it's your postman or your local barista. It's just trying your best. And I'm not saying something that's always easy to do, because life can be full of conflict as well. So not saying but I think that leaving people better you found them is something that I try to do as much as possible. And yeah, some days I do it, some days I don't. But I think having that at the back of my mind has definitely helped me cultivate really amazing, meaningful relationships personally, but also professionally.
Elizabeth, this has been really heartwarming. You are wise beyond your years.
Ah,
And you are definitely going
thank
to
you.
inspire some young women out there. So thank you so much for your time. And
Oh, I appreciate you. And
yeah,
thank you so much for the platform. I know when we met, it was at an event, and that was a few months ago now. So I really appreciate you sticking to it. And so I really thank you for being really gracious in still persevering to get this interview done. So yeah, really, really appreciate you.
brilliant. That's what we do. We're human. Things happen, isn't it? Life happens, as they say. So this has been the Trailblazers Experience Podcast. Audience, you know where to find us. We're on all streaming platforms. And thank you.
Thank you.